screen? Yes? Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So we will begin our class. So in this class, we will look into the basics towards the microprocessors and microcontrollers. So that is, we begin with the introduction to microprocessors. So when we are going to talk about the introduction of microprocessors, first we should look at a way where the evaluation of computers has been went. That it went to first generation, followed by second generation, third generation, and fourth generation. So altogether, it starts from 1940s to 50s and 50s to 60s, 60s to 70s, and 70s to 80s, and thereby now it is where we will witness a lot of changes in the evaluation of the computers, etc. So in the very first beginning of evaluation, that too in the second generation time, when it is purely an electric way of representing the things, the first and foremost thing was the mainframe computer. So in this mainframe computer, it was developed by the people called as IBM, and they called it as some Cray, and with the 4381. So this was a name which was given to it, and people, they have to work directly there on the mainframe computer, and it is a very big, as huge as a room. So there it was of large capacity, and at that time they used to work with 64 bits at a time. So when we call it with an Indian supercomputer, so we say it is Param, and it is maintained by CDAC in Bangalore. So they are going to maintain this supercomputer, and which was an extension or an advanced version towards the mainframes. So this was the thing when it went towards the mainframe computer. And the second thing was a mini computer, and the size, we call it as some rack size. Okay, so in the server room, of a C block, you can witness they are going to be in form of racks. So in form of racks, the CPU is going to be taken up, and there it is what we can call it as a scale down of mainframe. We will call this element as a scale down of mainframe. So why we are going to call this item as a scale down? Because when we say it is a mainframe computer, you can see it is a huge volume in the rooms, but now it is little bit compact when coming to the size. It is towards compared to the mainframe computer. So some of the examples which went off with this mainframe will be the DIE, and will be the VAX computers, and of course, so it is also in the second and third generation evaluated computer, and at that time they used to work with either 62-bit or either 32-bit of word length. So that's how it went with the way of evaluating the mini computer. So the next thing we say the microcomputers. So when we are going to call it as a microcomputers, the first and foremost thing is it has the mu p. So mu p stands for the microprocessor as the chip. So as the CPU, what we are going to interpret. So the microcomputers, they will be having the central processing unit as a chip, and that central processing unit, we are going to call it one as a microcomputers. So some of the appliances, you can say the desktop computer, the laptop computer, the tabs, uh, the mobile phones. So there are vast number of applications which are going to use this microcomputers. So the only advantage was portability. The only advantage was it is going to have the nature of the portability which it is going to bring up into the evaluation. And of course, so here what is the advantage of was the word length. It can be either 8, 16 or 32 or 64. It is compatible to any type of word length. So it can work with the bit size of 8, bit size of 16, bit size of 32, bit size of 64. So any of it is going to happen out with these items. And then we have the central processing unit. This it is going to be fabricated on a single chip. So that is the advantage. And it is going to be linked up with the memory, that is with the random access memory and with the read-only memory. So this is all regarding the architectural issues of the microcomputer. So whatever is in a cabinet, we can't say it is a computer. We can't call it as a microprocessor. So especially we will check only the CPU, and that CPU itself we say it is a microprocessor. So that is all regarding the way we need to look into the uh, microprocessors, etc. So before we look into this microprocessor, etc., there is one more word called as ports. So ports is a location where we can link the input and output devices to the CPU. That is, they can make to and from data transfer. So that is where the port is going to happen, and ports, they will be of a serial port and they will be of a parallel port. So this is another key takeaway what we need to understand at this point of time. So ports, they can be a serial, they can be a parallel, and yeah, that is the first key takeaway. Second key takeaway, when we say it is a serial, yeah, it takes up bit by bit communication. When we are going to call this item as a parallel entity, then at a time 8 or at a time 16 bits are going to be transferred. And the next thing was, we can't directly connect a component to a CPU. We have to connect it to the port, and from that port the data will be migrated. So ports are positions where we can connect the input and we can connect the output. So that is all regarding the first way of presenting you the types of computers. So we presented you the basic types of computers with the mainframes, with the mini computers, and with the microcomputers, etc. Fine. Now, once we do have the microprocessor or the interchangeable a microcomputer, and it is interchangeable to microprocessor. So what is microprocessor? A chip which has a central processing unit on it, which is single. We call it as a microprocessor. Now this chip we are going to integrate to the different components of a computer, to input output devices, to memory. Then we are going to call it as microcomputer. Microcomputer advantage was mainframe will be as big as this room. Mini computers, they are as big as the server with rack capacity, will be like a almare or where in our house as long as that, and as the safe in our house. So there it comes with the mini computers. There is a lagging of portability, and that portability was addressed. So how is it addressed? It is addressed with the microcomputers. So you can carry a laptop, which is freely, you can move from one location to another location. You have your mobile. So carrying laptop is much more flexible when compared to the mini computers or a mainframe computer. So that was the advantage. Now, how is this microcomputer made up of? Microcomputer is made up of the microprocessor. What is microprocessor? Microprocessor is going to be a single chip, which it is going to contain the central processing unit, and to this central processing unit, the memory and the input output devices are going to be connected. So this is all the background up to now what we have talked. The next thing what we have to look will be the uniprogramming. So when we are going to call it as uniprogramming, we call it as monoprogramming. When we are going to call it as uniprogramming, we are going to call it as uniprogramming or a monoprogramming. That is single job at a time. That is one job at a time processed. So the other name for this uniprogramming, we are going to call this one as batch processing. So I have process 1, process 2, process 3. So what happens was P1 will start from 8 to 9, P2 will take up from 9 to 10, and P3 will move from 10 to 11. So in this way, we are going to have one job after another, one job after another. So that is where we are going to call here as a batch processing content. So who is going to do this batch processing, etc. means it is going to be done by the operating system. So what is operating system? It is going to be a control program which it is going to acts as an interface between system user and hardware. So this was the basic definition for the operating systems. So operating system, it is going to be a control program and which it is going to act as an interface between the system users and between the system hardware. So how we are going to bring this into the scenario? We are going to bring this in a scenario where the users doesn't directly talk to a hardware chip, etc. And similarly, the programs has to be processed for him. So now at this point of time, we need to integrate these two items. We need to have an interface, we need to have a translator, we need to have a mediator, and that mediator job is going to be taken up with the uniprogramming, with the operating system. And the very first way where this uniprogramming is going to be done, it is going to be with the batch processing system. So that is all regarding the batch processing system. So in batch processing system, what we have highlighted was one job at a time is going to be executed. That is the first and foremost item we need to look into it. Next, one job will execute, later on another job will execute, later on another job will execute. So they are going to practice the serial nature of executing the things, the serial nature of executing the things. So this is what we talk here about a uniprogramming. After uniprogramming, the next and foremost element we are going to have will be the multi-programming content. We are going to have this word called as a multi-programming content. So when we are going to talk about a multi-programming content, we can say multiple jobs are executing in parallel, then it minimizes the CPU idle time. It is going to minimize the CPU idle time and switches CPU from one job to another. So this was the primary aim of bringing out the multi-programming. So in multi-programming, the drawback where the uniprogramming has addressed, that is only one job at a time has been taken up, so that it is going to be recovered. Second thing, the multi-programming jobs, they are going to work out in parallel. Third, it is going to minimize the CPU idle time. So why it is going to minimize the CPU idle time? Because it is not going to wait for a program to load. It will automatically move from one programming to another program. So assume I am going to have P1, P2 and P3. These are going to be the processes, or we are going to call them as jobs. So P1, P2 and P3. So when P1 is going to be taken up, so CPU was allotted to the process P1. CPU was allotted to the process P1, and when process is going to be getting executed, it is going to be getting executed, then obviously it completes the things that is P1. Later on, what it is going to move us, now P1 needs IO. P1 needs IO. So how is this IO addressed? So P1 needs IO. So at this point of time, how IO is going to be managed? That means what is IO here? That is we have user interaction. We are going to have an user interaction. So I can say scanf, I can say printf. So I'm going to say scan I. Now I have to give I as 10, and then I have to print I to 10. So you can see here, scanf it is going to be an input operation, and printf it is going to be an output operation. So this module will need some 2 or 3 seconds of time. This module needs 2 or 3 seconds of time. So this 2 or 3 second of time, we are going to call it as an idle time. This 2 or 2 seconds of time is going to be an idle time of CPU. So meanwhile, CPU will switch, CPU switches from one job to another. CPU will switch from one job to another, where that concept we are going to call it as context switching. We are going to call that element as context switching. So when the process needs some IO, when the process needs some IO, what happens was CPU will switch from one job to another job. CPU will move from one job to another job in order to save the idle time. Therefore, multiple jobs can be executed in parallel. Therefore, multiple jobs will be executed in parallel. So this was the advantage what the multiprogramming is going to present us. Fine. So we talked about this uniprogramming. In uniprogramming, it is going to support the batch processing. In batch processing, we have one job at a time. First job executes, second job executes, and third job executes. So CPU, it does have some idle time, and it is totally wasted. So in order to prove out this idleness, what was happening was we will move to the multiprogramming concept. In this multiprogramming concept, what will happen was multiple jobs are going to be executed simultaneously. Multiple jobs are going to be executed simultaneously. So when we are going to say multiple jobs are going to be executed simultaneously, how it is going to do means, first it executes P1. When P1 needs some input output from the keyboard, so obviously CPU has to wait, because I have to give I is equals to 10, then I have to print I is equals to 10 on the monitor. It takes 2 or 3 seconds time. So 2 or 3 seconds time is almost negligible to us. But as far as the system is going to be concerned, the 2-3 seconds of time is more precious to it. So CPU time is going to be ideally wasted. So in order to improve the CPU idle time, it is going to use a concept called as context switching. In context switching, what it is going to do is it switches from multiple process, that is, it switches from process P2 to P3, it switches from process P1 to P2. So in this way, one job after another. So it is, meanwhile, one job is going to do some IO, another job is going to be executing by the CPU. So multiple events are going to be handled in parallel. So that was the advantage what this multiprogramming is going to address. After multiprogramming, the next word, the next illustration will be the time sharing or multitasking operation. So the third way of putting the things towards us in order to save the idle time will be the time sharing operating system or the multitasking approach inside the microprocessor. So how it is going to do is, it is going to use a word called as round robin. It is going to use a word called as round robin. So what is round robin means? It works like a word called as a circular linked list. So however we are going to work with a circular linked list, in the same model we are going to bring up the round robin approach. So what is round robin here means, I am going to have process P1, process P2, process P3. So process P3, it will now bounce back to the process P1. Process P3 will now bounce back to the process P1. So in this way, we are going to have a chain of content. So obviously, the multitasking is going to happen. So the first thing was, it is going to say multiple processes are executed in parallel. So that is the first key takeaway what we need to understand. So the first key takeaway was, we are going to have multiple processes, and these multiple processes, they are going to be executed in parallel. So that is the first key takeaway. What is the second key takeaway? It is going to fix up a time quantum. It is going to fix up a time quantum, or we are going to call it as, it is going to fix up a word called as time slice. So time slice, assume we are going to say some 10 milliseconds. So what happens was P1, P2, P3 jobs are there. So this is what we are going to pull it out. So after P3 happened, then it is going to move back to the P1. So first 10 milliseconds it executes P1, next 10 milliseconds it executes P2, next 10 milliseconds it executes P3. After executing next 3 milliseconds, then it executes P1, P1, P2, P3. So it went off with P1, it went off with P2, and it went off with P3. Again, next 10 milliseconds, P0, P1, next 10 milliseconds, P2, next 10 milliseconds, P3. So in this way, it is going to execute multiple jobs. It is going to execute multiple jobs in parallel. So what was the basic difference of multiprogramming was, it has executed the complete program, then it is going to move to the next. So here it executes complete program, then it switches to other. But when we are going to work with the time sharing, or when we are going to talk about the multitasking operating system, it is going to do the partial execution. It is going to do up only the partial execution of the data. So how a partial execution is going to take up means, obviously first 10 milliseconds it executes job 1, next 10 milliseconds it executes job 2, next 10 milliseconds it executes job 3. So in this way it is going to move from one job to another, one process to another. So in this way the time sharing operating system has been implemented. So this all came in the second generation, this all came in the third generation things. But even though it is going to be an operating system, how it is going to be related means, it has to be done by the CPU. It has to be executed by the control unit. So the processor which it is going to be in the CPU on a chip will have to execute this task. So we have the latest versions of the mobiles, etc. So those, they are going to work with multiple cores, which we will discuss again. So fine. So up to now, what we talked will be the way of presenting the execution with the processes. 1 uni, 2 multi, 3 time sharing, and fourth one we are going to say distributed systems. So when we are going to call it as a distributed systems, we call it as decentralized systems. We are going to call it as decentralized systems. So earlier we are going to in 1980s and etc., when the railway system was not computerized, to purchase a railway ticket we used to stand in a queue at a single counter, and then we used to purchase a ticket in 1980s, etc. But now the scenario was quite different, because there it is only a centralized system. There we are going to call it as a centralized system. So at one location only the availability was there. So people used to queue up, people used to stand for long waiting, etc. But when coming to the decentralized system, what we are going to happen was, we are going to have an internet facility, we are going to have a connectivity, and now the system was decentralized. So at any remote location, using internet, we are able to purchase tickets. So how is this possible? It is possible with a word called as networking. So in networking, it applies with a local area network, a metropolitan area network, a wide area network. So using a networking, it is going to build up the intranet or an internet. When we are going to call it as an internet, it can geographically connect multiple locations, and if it is an intranet, it is going to be within an organization. It is going to be within an organization. So for example, if we are going to work with ECAP, so ECAP, yeah, it was only within the campus premises where you can't access from your home. But when we are going to have the application called as the Microsoft Teams and this svcwecap.in or the Moodles or the Vishnu Moodle LMS platform where we used to conduct the quizzes, where we used to give the lectures. So all this happened from geographically different locations. So it is feasible with the internet. So now you know the differences. The first example, we call it as an ECAP. In the campus only you can go with it. And the second example, we are going to call it the Vishnu Learning Management System. So using this Vishnu LMS, you are able to do your assignments, you are able to submit your quizzes. That too, you are waiting at the home. So you are not at the on campus, you are at the off campus, but still you are able to access that material. So how is this done? It is done with a LAN, WAN or MAN using internet. So distributed systems, yeah, the very first thing, it is going to be a decentralized system. It can be at any location. Second thing, it is going to have a networking approach. It is going to have a networking approach. So in this networking approach, it can connect to a CPU, it can connect to a CPU, it can connect to a printer, or it can connect to any device, it can be connecting to some sensors. So whatever value we are going to put a digital device, whatever digital device we are going to adopt, so that device can be connected to a network and we are able to communicate it with one another. So that is all regarding the distributed systems. So what was the first advantage? The first advantage was it is going to have a decentralized system. Centralized system, it will be at only one location. Example, in the earlier 1980s and 70s, to purchase a railway ticket, people has to go to the railway station, stand in a queue and get the ticket. But nowadays, we do have the IRCTC app, and then we have another applications where we can directly procure the ticket, railway ticket. So how it is happening? It is happening at a decentralized locations. So earlier it is at a single point, we call it as a centralized. Now sitting in your home, you are able to purchase the tickets. We are going to call it as decentralized. How is this decentralized managed? This decentralized concept is going to be managed with the internet. How is this internet maintained? It is maintained with networking. How is the networking made up of? It is made up of local area network, metropolitan area network, wide area network. Local area network, it is within the organization. Metropolitan area network, it is within the city or a town. Wide area network, it is between countries. So this is the basic configuration. Now in this basic configuration, via a network, what we can link? We can link the sensors, we can link the CPUs, we can link the mobile, we can link the laptops, we can link the printer, we can link any digital or an IoT component, and all of them, they can communicate with one another. So that is where the data is going to be distributed among the multiple components. Therefore, it is going to be a decentralized approach. We call that mechanism as a decentralized systems at this point of time. So up to now, we have talking about two basic contents. The very first basic content we were looking with the three words. The first word we call it as a mainframe computer. The next word we call it as a mini computer. The third thing we call it as microcomputer. After that, we are now telling that an operating system, it is going to be an interface between the system user and hardware, and now system hardware is there and the software is going to be the operating system, where we need to see that it gives all the jobs has to be executed. So in serial or in parallel. How is in serial, how is in parallel decided? It is decided by the control unit, which is going to be part of the microprocessor. So that is the reason why we are going to bring up these scenarios. So if I am going to call it as a batch processing, we will call it as a uniprogramming, and it is going to be taken up one job after another. The drawback was lot of CPU idle time was wasted. So in order to eliminate that, we went with a multiprogramming concept. In multiprogramming concept, multiple jobs can be handled simultaneously. How we are going to handle the multiple jobs simultaneously? That means one job went for an IO. That means CPU was idle. So that idle time will be minimized by assigning the CPU with a new job. We will switch CPU from one job to another. We call it as context switching. So again, when that process comes from an IO, it is going to be executed. So multiple jobs are going to be handled. That is where this multiprogramming concept came. After multiprogramming, we do have the third approach. We call it as time sharing or a multitasking environment. In this time sharing, we fix up a time quantum of 10 slots. So every 10 slots, CPU will switch from one job to another. It will not bother whether the complete program is executed or not. It won't work like that. It will work every 10 seconds from one job to another. So in this way, partial execution is going to be promoted in time sharing. And another important theory regarding the time sharing or a multitasking was it is going to be based on the round robin algorithm. So when we are going to call it as a round robin algorithm, what happens was it works with a circular linked concept, that is one P1, P2, P3, and after P3 again it switches to P1. So in this model we are going to get the time sharing content. After that, we are going to have this distributed systems. So in distributed systems, we do have a decentralized approaches. So in this decentralized approaches, we have a networking atmosphere with LAN, WAN, MAN, and multiple devices can be able to connect it and share the content distributed among them. So that is where the distributed systems will have the advantage. So after that, after that, when we are going to talk about a microprocessor, when we are going to talk about a microprocessor, we have the central processing unit, and this central processing unit will have two components, that is control unit and arithmetic logic unit. So control unit and arithmetic logic unit. So this is put on a CPU, it is going to be put on a chip. Now, it can work with 8, it can work with 16, it can work with 32, it can work with 60 board bit at a time. So this is the first key takeaway. Second thing, when it is coming to some i3 or i5 or i7 or an i9, or when you say it is mobile, you say quad core, octa core, right? You purchase your mobile phone, you say, my mobile phone is a quad core, my mobile phone is an octa core. So what is core here? Core, it is one set of CPU on a chip. It is going to be one set of CPU on a chip. That means one control unit and one arithmetic logic unit. If I am going to call it as dual core, that means I am going to have a chip. In this chip, I have two cores, core 1, core 2. In core 1, I have CPU 1, and core 2, I am going to have CPU 2. Again, what is CPU? It is going to have control unit, it is going to have arithmetic logic unit. Then what if I am going to call it as quad core? What if I am going to call it as quad core? So when I am going to call it as a quad core, now what we are going to interpret was there will be 4 microprocessors, there will be 4 CPUs on a chip. That means I have control unit, arithmetic logic unit, I have control unit, arithmetic logic unit, control unit, arithmetic logic unit, control unit, arithmetic logic unit. So there are 4 cores. Therefore, it is quad core. So you purchase your mobile quad core processor. You say my mobile is an octa core processor. Octa core means you have 8 cores, 8 CPUs, 8 microprocessors burnt inside a single chip. So that is the advantage what you are going to have. So in the 1970s and 80s, India made its first rocket. At that time, they used only one CPU and one ALU, and the word length was 8 or 16. But now you people, you are having a very high-end laptops with 64-bit and mobiles even with 64-bit, where a lot of programming can be done up. So where now you people, you are using to this quad core or a octa core. So now I had a glimpse with microprocessor. If it is a single core, it does has a one CPU, one ALU. If it is multi-core, we will have multiple cores. It starts from dual core, it starts from quad core, it can be a octa core. So these are the different takeaways from today's class. In the afternoon class, we will continue this same discussion. So I will end up